Good morning, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good midnight, everyone. I don't know what time you're watching this, but wherever it is, welcome. Thank you, Claudia, for allowing us the opportunity and the privilege to talk to you today. We welcome you to Give Me 10.
No problem. I am so excited. Thank you so much for inviting me, Pastor Hernandez.
What's the first thing? I'm looking at this. I'm rando guy or lady number 5, and I'm looking at this and like, who is this person? Who's Claudia? Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, what you do, what your passions are?
Man, so currently I am the online content manager for Message Magazine. But personally, I am very passionate about the intersection between faith, culture, and justice. I'm passionate about racial reconciliation. I'm passionate about ministry. I'm passionate about true discipleship. And I love a really good hoodie, Pastor Hernandez.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. Thank you. That's great. Now, if I am a pastor, most of the people who watch this are pastors and leaders. I'm a pastor and I am interested in racial reconciliation. I'm serious about it. Mm-hmm. I want to get educated. Usually in Adventism, we've all kept to our tribes, right? We've never really intersected but that's starting to happen more and more. What's the first step, other than like, okay, what do I do? Okay, let me talk to my one black friend, and I want to talk to them and say, hey, teach me everything you know about this culture, or my Hispanic friend. What is my first step? Where do I go first?
Man, that is so good, Pastor Hernandez. My friend Michael Nixon has this saying, and I butcher it every time, but he basically says that the gospel is universal and Google is free. Okay. So the first step really is to go to Google because even though asking your black friend or your brown friend or your Asian friend is a good resource, the reality is that race and racism impact individual lives very differently depending on a variety of reasons. And so in order to really understand the social construct that is race and to understand how the system itself is actually operating in America, then you have to do some research that goes outside of relationship. And there are also even studies that show that just because you have a friend that is a person of color, that actually doesn't eliminate implicit bias. So you can have really good friends that are black or brown or what have you, and still hold prejudice, etc. So one of the first books that I would really recommend that anyone read is a book called The Very Good Gospel by Lisa Sharon Harper. She really does a beautiful theological journey that really talks about the work of shalom and how discipleship and following Jesus Christ is about the work of reconciliation, but not just reconciliation between men and women, but reconciliation between the races, reconciliation between humanity and God, but even reconciliation between us and the earth, us and the animals. Literally, reconciliation is about us reconciling everything back to that pre-fall state. And so we're all supposed to be trying to work for that kind of shalom.
Okay, fantastic. Now, let me ask you a personal question. In your job, in your role, you must deal with severe blowback from certain quarters. How do you deal personally when you are attacked? So you have 2 ways that people might attack you. One, you're a woman in leadership. And that, ruffles the feathers of some people. And then on the other side, you're a woman of color in leadership, right? So you must get really loving letters, right? You must get a lot of people saying, "Yay, Claudia!" How do you make? Because this is something that pastors deal with, especially if you're interested in racial reconciliation. You're going to have 30% of your church that says, "No, that's political. We don't want to deal with it." How do pastors make sure that they conserve their mental health and they deal with resistance?
Oh man, that is such a great question. And I do get so many loving letters and comments. One of the things that I have begun to do is just to protect my peace. So one thing I would recommend is just not reading the comments. That's one thing that you can always do, at least on social media, whether it's on your church's YouTube page, on your personal Instagram, whatever it is. You can see the comments that are coming in to affirm and encourage, or even comments that are coming in to ask questions. But then you can tell when that one comment is coming in to call you a devil straight from hell. And when that comment is there, just go ahead and skip over that one. The other thing that I do is I don't actually respond to emails, like when trolls end up in my email, and they send me these long letters, or they try to send my boss long letters about how I'm so wrong about everything that I'm saying. I do not read them and I do not respond. I think that what is key is for us to understand what God has called and asked us to do. And if we have spent the time in our prayer closets, if we have spent the time knowing the voice of God and knowing what God has to say about race and about reconciliation, then we know what he is calling us to do. So the affirmation also doesn't matter as much as the criticism. So I don't pay attention to either of them, because I also don't want to be swayed by the people's or the masses affirmation that I now move away from the mission as well. So affirmation and criticism both can be detrimental, that you might want to very strategically find ways to avoid and ensure that you're focusing your time in the scriptures and in prayer.
That very, very good answer. I don't understand why people say, I demand an answer. I demand that you write. Like, why? Who are you? Why are you demanding stuff? And then other people who send me stuff that somebody else said about me. Hey, this person said this about you. I wanted you to let you know. I don't want you to send me that thing. I don't have no desire for you to be the in between. Now,
no, that's so good, Pastor Hernandez, because I really feel like people think that they're doing you a service when they send you the stuff. Like, they want you to be aware of what's being said about you. And I think that that's good. But I really want people to understand the amount of emotional drain that comes with trolls. So we really don't need to ingest that kind of vitriol as leaders. And so if there's any way that you can protect yourself, or even if you have a friend or someone that you are close to and you see that kind of vitriol, even try to protect them, from that kind of language.
Now, here's a question. As we just finished Black History Month, and there's a lot of documentaries usually in Black History Month about the involvement of the African American church in North America, specifically in the social justice struggle, right? 60s and 70s, 50s. How do you see it now? Do you see the same level of involvement, less involvement? Should we be more involved? Please respond. This is a two-part question. Please respond to the often heard rebuttal where they say, well, you start talking about race, no, that's too political. We don't want to be divisive, because when we speak prophetically, there are some people who get upset, and it's like, yeah, we don't want to divide, we just want to be uniters. So can you answer that two-part question?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, I think that when you look at the historical Black African American church in America, they have always been involved and engaged with social justice issues in the local community. There are most certainly various ministries or denominations that have certainly exploited the community, but by and large, the Black church is working for and ministering to Black people in America. And so that only has continued even unto this current moment. I think the reason why people are wondering if they are still present is because the current Black Lives Matter movement was not birthed out of the church. So I think that that's what the difference is. Right now, we're used to the civil rights movement, which was birthed out of the Black church, versus the Black Lives Matter movement, which was not birthed out of Christianity in any way, shape, or form. But that does not mean that the Black church is no longer engaged or involved in the Black Lives Matter movement. What's different is when we now come to denominations like Adventism, or what we would identify as a predominantly white evangelical denominations that have Black members within those denominations. Those Black people might engage with social justice on an individual level, but you don't see the Black Church of Adventism as intricately engaged in the movement as you would other predominantly, yea, exclusively Black denominations. And I think that that's intimately attached to our theology and the fact that we do have this teaching that, well, being involved in social justice is being engaged in politics. And this is what I always say to people, particularly Adventists who want to come to me and say, Claudia, you are pushing a political agenda on the church. You are trying to make us engaged in politics. And my response to them is this. The Adventist Church is already and always engaged in politics. Every single time you have an Adventist attorney that is hired by the General Conference to go to any court, yea, all the way up to the Supreme Court, to argue on behalf of your right to go to church on Saturday, you are engaged in politics. And so it's not that the Seventh-day Adventist Church doesn't engage in politics. It's that the Seventh-day Adventist Church engages in a politics that works to its own benefit. And currently, Black Lives Matter, immigration, many of these other social issues that are particularly attached to Black and brown bodies are not of a major concern to this predominantly run white evangelical denomination. But I think that why Adventism needs to begin to care about these social issues is because the majority of the Adventist church worldwide is a Black and brown church. The majority of our members are Black and brown people. And so we have to care about the various systems and structures and institutions that are actively seeking to destroy, discriminate, and exterminate them, quite frankly. And any discipleship or any Christianity that is not doing that work, I don't think is being true to the gospel.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much for your answer. Now, my last question is, you already mentioned one book, right? But if I want to get educated, I want to be intentional. I know I want to go to Google. I want to read that first book that you said. Are there any other resources that I can engage for me to understand and be able to be illuminated actually about a real reality, right? I don't think that the problem now is that people of color are more outspoken. Is we're just intersecting more. It's always been this way, right? We've always had this conversation, but with the advance of social media, so the voices are amplified, right? And now we're hearing the conversation that always existed, right? So what would be some that would be my final question. What would be some resources that people can go to and they can take advantage of if they want to know more on this specific issue?
Yeah, man, this is always super difficult for me. So Carmela and I actually just interviewed Jemar Tisby. He's a New York Times bestselling author on our weekly podcast, What's the Message? And he wrote 2 books. The first is called The Color of Compromise, where he looks at the history of the connection between Christianity and American white supremacy. And then he also wrote a new book, which was published in January of this year, called How to Fight Racism. And so I think both of those books, particularly if you're wanting the history of the conversation, particularly around racial reconciliation, but then also a follow-up book that is extremely practical. Like How to Fight Racism is literally this question that we're trying to kind of answer right now. Like, Claudia, once I read the book and once I get the biblical scriptures that support this work, what then do I do? What is the practical work? And Tisby has definitely done that. So the 3 books I would tell you to read are The Very Good Gospel by Lisa Sharon Harper, The Color of Compromise by Jemar Tisby, and then his second book, How to Fight Racism, also by Jemar Tisby.
All right. Thank you very much, Claudia. Thank you for being part of our the program today, and blessings on your work. You do good work, and continue not reading the trolls. Just do what you do and let God bless. All right. Thank you. It's been great to be with you guys today. This has been Give Me 10. If you want to reach out, we're going to put the links to those books in the description of the video so people can access it there. Thank you very much for being with us today. We hope to see you once again.